Many organizations focus heavily on responding to emergencies. But what if some crisis could be identified before they escalate? Today's conversation focuses on awareness, communication, and how organizations can create environments where people feel empowered to speak up before the tragedy occurs. I want to welcome you to the Faith Secure podcast, where we are watchful, prayerful, and prepared. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Brown, and our conversation is going to focus on an important aspect of preparedness that many churches and organizations overlook, and that's early warning and communication. Our guest today, and I'm delighted to have him on, is Cyril Rayon, founder of Resiligence, a company focused on AI-powered threat intelligence and anonymous reporting systems that are designed to help organizations identify concerns and issues before they become crises. Cyril is also the pastor of the Blessing Church in San Jose, California. This gives him a unique perspective for our conversation today. Again, our conversation is going to focus on prevention, awareness, communication culture, and how churches can strengthen preparedness through both leadership and practical tools that support early reporting and response. I want to welcome Cyril to the podcast. Welcome, sir.
It's a great honor to be with you, Dr. Mike. Definitely, I've enjoyed your podcast. I've listened to several of them, and happy to be on the podcast myself and to share my thoughts and have a great conversation.
Oh, that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to dive right in, okay? We're going to talk about the warning signs before the crisis. So the opening question I got for you, Cyril, is when incidents occur in churches, in schools, or in other organizations, are there often warning signs beforehand?
Great question, Dr. Mike. There is always warning signs. And I read a research report not too long ago, which said
Okay.
86% of the times before a violent incident happens, at least one person knows about it. And 68% of the times, two or more people know about it. And in this day and age of social media and constant communications, there are warning signs much before the incident. And I
Okay.
think bottom line is research proves that, and also by experience, we know that. So there are warning signs that we need to be able to capture to prevent these incidents.
That's interesting. I didn't know the statistics were that high. So why do people sometimes hesitate to report concerns?
See, the thing is, I think people don't want to get involved. I mean, they are leading their own lives, and they see something suspicious, and sometimes they think it is innocent. Sometimes they don't have clarity whether it is suspicious or not, and
That's
then they
fair.
just say, "Let me just move on. I'm not going to report it." But if there is real good training, even to what to look for,
Okay.
people can understand. And also, if we keep the communication anonymous, that has been our experience, that if you keep it anonymous, then they will easily report. And even in a two-way communication, continue that conversation because they know that their names are not going to be mentioned
Right.
or involved. And so that makes it really comfortable for people to uh, s- get involved because their names are not going to be mentioned.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So how important is communication in early intervention in the crisis?
I think communication is everything. And first of all, creating a culture of communication
Ah,
and
yes.
even trying to explain to everyone how we all need to be safe together, and each one has to be involved. We cannot just have a security team, and especially churches. We all know that they don't have security teams in place. It's the church members who have some experience in security or law enforcement who get involved, and many of the churches might not even have those kind of people. So it's
That's
like,
true.
it's basically people who really come forward to volunteer become the security,
Right,
you know,
right. That's
and they
true.
might not have any experience at all in security. It's important to have a culture of communication and trust, to really build a program around security.
And you mentioned something interesting, Cyril, where you said creating a culture of awareness and reporting.
Yeah,
So, how can churches create an environment where people feel safe speaking up?
yeah. I think first of all, everyone in churches, pastors and elders and deacons, need to understand that violent incidents can happen anywhere, including churches. And it's sad that we are talking about this, but I'm glad that you have this podcast to raise awareness that
Yes,
even churches and places of worship need to consider that a violent incident can happen there. And
yes,
especially the culture of the churches where it's all open, right? Anybody can walk in to a church, and it is important for us to consider that incidents can happen. And once we know that and have a conversation, it has to be a conversation with the leadership team in the
yes,
church, as
yes.
well as a all hands meeting, where we need to say there are violent incidents that have happened in churches and synagogues before, and it could happen in our church. Once we have that conversation, then people understand that we are not trying to create fear, but these are things that we need to discuss.
Exactly.
you know we have to grapple with the challenges we face and have a plan around it and move forward. And I think that's the way we can approach it, to have these heart to heart conversations. These are not easy conversations to have, but if we have a plan, if we prepare for it, it's much better than not having a plan.
Yeah, you just mentioned something very important, Cyril, about how leadership can encourage awareness without creating fear. That was critical. So, you tell me the basis of what you mentioned early on is about anonymous reporting. Why is that important? You touched on it, but just
Yeah,
expound on that a little bit.
sure. The thing is, creating a culture of reporting is one thing, but also having a tool to help people report. Because
Mhm.
let's say it's a church of 500 people. you know Now, if there is a culture of reporting and you give them a tool to report, then it's much easier. And secondly, the anonymity becomes important, because typically people don't want to get involved. And we
That's true.
actually have proven this by real implementation, not only research. So there was this customer of ours, they had set up a hotline with a regular phone number.
Okay.
So it was a regular phone number where people are supposed to call, and they said it is going to be anonymous. And this was like 15 years back.
Okay.
And it's like, we all know that when we call a number, the caller ID shows up there.
Absolutely.
It's like you call that number, and they say, "Hello, Joe, you are anonymous now." It does not work. It does not
Okay.
work. It's funny, but it does not work. So there has to be an assurance of confidentiality and anonymity, and that's why we built that out. I mean, we there is no exposure of the number of the user or the name of the user. It's totally anonymous. The report comes to our server, we anonymize it, encrypt it, and then forward the information to the web portal. So the user is totally hidden from
Okay.
the person or
Okay.
the administrators that are seeing this information. And once you assure the user that it is confidential, your name is not going to be mentioned, then the then it's easier for everyone in the church or other organizations to report it. And this is not just, I'm not just saying this, we have implemented it with many customers, and we have
Okay.
proven that when it is really anonymous and confidential, many people report. And I mentioned to you about that customer. They implemented Tip Now, and with the phone number, hardly any tips throughout the year, maybe one or two. We
Okay.
implemented a texting and a mobile app based reporting, and they started getting like at least 7 or 8 tips every week, you know.
Hmm.
And it's still not overwhelming, the way
Right.
I always talk about this with customers is, customers always ask me, is this overwhelming? Will our dispatch will be overwhelmed? Will our set of administrators in the church, obviously there is no dispatch, in
Right.
the
Right.
church there is a group of volunteers who are managing it. I always say this is additional information for you and for the safety group, which will help you to understand where to look, where to go, and
And
to make sure that things are safe in the church, in the organization.
oh, that is a perfect segue to the next segment I want to go into, Cyril. We're going to
Sure.
talk about technology prevention and threat awareness. So I want to
Yeah.
start you off with this question. How
Yeah.
is technology changing the way organizations think about prevention and threat awareness?
Sure. I think now in the AI age, there is so much that we can do. And of course we cannot do everything. We need budgets, we need things. So we have to look at our situation, whether it's a church or a school or other organizations, look at what are the risks, and based on the problem and the challenges, we implement solutions.
Okay.
Because there are so many things technology can do, but each organization is different, each church is different. They are of varying sizes, they are in different locations.
True.
Some locations are not so safe, some locations are very safe. It
Hmm.
depends on so many things. But one thing is for sure, a communication platform is a need for everyone.
Right.
And then whether you're going to have cameras with like weapon detection or license plate recognition, all those things need to be analyzed. But the way I think about, and I mentioned to churches and other organizations, is you need the fundamentals in place.
Yes.
First things first is do an assessment. First things
Absolutely.
first, talk about it. Have
Yes.
a conversation with your leadership team, as pastors, with your elders and deacons, and say, hey, we have to have a plan. We have to have a conversation around this. Then have a all hands meeting with the entire church,
Right.
communicating that. And then
Right.
I would say the first step is actually doing an assessment. It's a very simple step. And because we might think that, hey, everything is safe. But when an expert comes in, like you can actually go through the church, take a round in the church and say, hey, these are the issues, and you can do that in the first 15 minutes and then go into the details,
Absolutely.
you know. But those are some initial steps, and then figure out what technologies are needed. I think we should not start with the technology, but
Right.
start with a very basic plan. First, awareness that there could be threats, simple assessment, set up a communication platform. That's where the technology comes into the picture. And then to add other things, there are so many different technologies that are available. There are
Absolutely.
schools, as you know, are implementing metal detectors, and there are
Absolutely.
schools that are implementing AI threat intelligence with weapon detection that we
Hmm.
offer as well. But it
Okay.
might not be needed in your context or in that particular church or school context.
Right.
So I think that's
Right.
how we have to think about technology, as a solution to a potential challenge. That
Okay.
way, it is easier because there will be so many things that you can do. But if you think about it as solving a particular challenge, then you can be focused on identifying the right solution for the right challenge.
Absolutely. So, how can AI and reporting systems support leadership in this?
I think it's very important now in the AI age, vision AI, as I call it, or
Mhm.
AI threat intelligence, is becoming available easily and also at a lower cost. Because I remember maybe 10 years back, vision AI solutions detecting weapons or detecting license plates, were available but were very expensive. And
Okay.
now the costs have come down that even smaller schools, churches can afford it. And again, based on the need, if you want to really make sure your lobby area is covered, to make sure you're detecting a weapon if somebody is bringing a weapon in,
Right. Right.
or maybe in
Absolutely.
the parking lot, somebody is removing a rifle from their trunk and you want to know that. And
Hmm.
as you know, even seconds matter in
Yes.
situations like this. And if you can find that, hey, somebody in the parking lot is grabbing a weapon from their trunk, you still have a few minutes. And
Yeah.
if the AI can detect the weapon and send an SMS alert, now you can take action to prevent that gun violence. So
Absolutely.
that's how AI can help. That is in AI threat intelligence. Even
Mhm.
in the anonymous reporting, what we have done is we have created an AI module that will automatically use natural language processing to detect the threat level in the tip that comes in. So as
Okay.
soon as it comes in, it will detect, is it a high threat level? Is it a medium threat level? Is it a low threat level? And the administrators on the system, the predefined administrators on the system, will get it on their text message saying this is a high threat tip. And then
Okay.
you will want to act on it immediately. Because even let's take a scenario in the churches, right? Let's say the service has started and now there is a information that is coming on text saying
Uh-huh.
seems like there is somebody with a gun in the parking lot,
Okay.
you know and that you have now 3 minutes to possibly lock down the facility, you know
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
whatever the next steps that you have planned, and you do that. And that is the importance of having AI even in the anonymous reporting aspect, where there could be uh, the natural language processing being used to process the tip to declare a threat level. That is one aspect. The
Right.
other aspect is using video analytics and vision AI, where the cameras that are pointed to the parking lot can automatically detect a weapon and really inform the administrators saying a weapon has been detected, you need to
Mm.
take action. So that's how AI can be used. And as I said, these technologies have matured a lot, the costs have come down. So I really encourage pastors and churches to really consider it and but get started. I think my initial encouragement is, and my experience has been, that churches do not even start, and
Mm.
many of them. And
Hmm.
I really want to encourage on this podcast churches to begin this process,
Yes.
and I think you are the right person to do this podcast because you come in at the initial phase, where you are
Mm.
going to be having a conversation with the leadership, consulting with them, telling them that, hey, these are the threats, this is the
Absolutely.
results of the
Yes.
assessments. We
Yes.
need to start there. But then I think that's why we plan to work together, Dr. Mike, because we can bring in the technology based on what is needed,
Mhm.
and it becomes a beautiful complementary partnership and friendship, Dr. Mike.
Okay. Now, I'm going to have to pivot a little bit here
Yeah,
because anytime you talk about AI, some
yeah,
concerns are brought up.
yes,
Like one is how should an organization or church for that matter
yeah.
balance vigilance and privacy?
It's a very good question. I think this is my view. When it comes to safety, when it comes to protecting people
Mhm.
and saving lives, privacy needs to take a back seat. And that's the reality of it, because we don't want to put people in harm's way saying we are not going to implement some of these technologies. But at the end of the day, let me also say this, that in anonymous reporting, we are not really throwing any names out. you know
Okay.
your information is not going out. So from that standpoint, it's the best of both the worlds. Your information is private, your name is not coming out. At the same time, the threat information is being communicated, and that's the most important thing. If there is a threat, then we need to know, and pastors need to know that there is a threat. And we all have seen that on several occasions, it's the pastor who is threatened.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
right?
That's true.
So the pastors need to take ownership to say there could be a threat to not only the pastor but everyone else. Because if there is a active shooter coming into the church, then there could be several lives that can be lost. And I was talking to a pastor who has had an incident. I forget the name of the church, it's in Texas.
Hmm.
But he explained to me what happened in his church, and this was probably in late 90s. I
Okay.
actually met him in Israel. We were actually in the Garden Tomb, and after that we went for lunch at a particular place. And so he was sitting next to me, and we had a great conversation. And he had a gun violence incident in his church. So
Wow.
anyway, the point is, we really need to make sure that if we use communication tools, then use anonymous communication tools so that privacy is also guarded. But in terms of adopting AI, I believe the churches, Christian schools, we really need to embrace AI, because AI is here to stay,
It's not
and
going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere.
Yes.
And it is mature now in terms of vision AI,
Right.
and we need to embrace it, and we need to maximize it for our churches, for our schools, to be safe, and to also teach our children AI,
Right.
because they need to embrace it, because otherwise
Yes.
we'll be left behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, I'm going to pivot a little bit. What responsibilities do pastors and organizational leaders carry when it comes to prevention?
Yeah, I think one of the things I really have been trying to communicate this
Mhm.
the entire journey of my business, Resilience, because
Okay.
our business is focused on prevention,
Okay.
and it's easy to react to certain things that happens. It's
Hmm.
like many organizations implement mass notification systems, and that's great.
Right. Right.
But that is actually responding to the crisis. But there is something you can do even before the crisis, and there is
Uh,
something you must do before the crisis happens. And that can happen only when you have a mindset of prevention.
absolutely.
Because it's easy to say, okay, if this happens, we'll do this, but it's too late. You might have lost lives by then. But instead, if you have a mindset of prevention and think through much early, then you can actually save lives, prevent violence, and keep your church and school safe. And so I think it's a mindset shift to understand that there are tools available for prevention, that there is things that we can do for prevention. We cannot just bury our head in the sand that
No.
we are a church, we don't need to do this.
Right.
Even small churches need to have this conversation and
Yes.
then see what is the appropriate thing to do. So, having a mindset of prevention is the first step. Saying, okay, things are happening around in churches and places of worship. We need to be aware of it. And to prevent anything to happen in our church or school, there has to be a mindset of prevention.
Absolutely. So, Syra, as we start to wind this thing down here, I need a practical takeaway for the viewers.
Yeah.
What are 3 practical steps that churches can immediately take to improve awareness and reporting?
Sure. I think For churches, those who have already maybe done an assessment, have implemented some technologies, you already have cameras in place, I think you are ahead of the game and you're ahead of the
Yeah.
curve, because many churches have not even talked about it. So let me address the churches who have not really thought through this. So first things first is have a conversation in your leadership meeting about security and safety, and that's what I would say as the first step. And
Okay.
have an all hands meeting with the church and say, we just finished a conversation in the leadership about safety and security. We wanted to talk to all of you and find out if somebody has experience in this field, you know,
Okay.
and get some volunteers and form a safety and security team. They might not be professionals, but they might be good, strong men and women who who want to really protect the church and the people. So I would say that's the
Mhm.
second step, and the third step I would say is do an assessment, and
Yes.
the fourth step, if I may add that,
By all
is
means.
you know is to figure out what technology really matches with the challenges that have been identified in the assessment. And I think those are the steps you could take, but you need to get started. I mean, that's my point. I really want to communicate that because I have talked to several churches and they don't have any safety or security plan, and I think that is very dangerous. And of course, we all have faith that God will protect us, but God
Yes.
also wants us to be wise. And we need
Yes.
to apply wisdom in the context of where we are, and move things forward.
All right. That was very well said. I'm going to give you a scenario now, Cyril. I'm going to test your
Sure.
metal here, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So now, here's the scenario, and then I will have followed up with a couple of questions. A church volunteer notices a concerning social media post from an individual that's connected to the church,
Mhm.
but is unsure whether to report it because they fear overreacting. What should happen next?
Yeah, I think even if this volunteer, let's say he mentions it to some other volunteer that they are volunteering for a particular event, there has to be a communication with the leadership, even if it is something very simple, because it
Mhm.
can turn out to be very profound. And we know, uh,
Absolutely.
we need to be vigilant. And even if it turns out to be nothing, it's better to have a conversation around it, because what if it turns out to become a active shooting situation?
Yes.
And we know by history that in a violent incident, several times the perpetrator has used social media to post certain things. So,
Mhm.
being aware of that, we need to communicate in the all hands meeting that I mentioned, that if you see something suspicious on social media, maybe it's a threat against the pastor,
Right.
maybe it's a threat against the church, and with so much division in the nation currently, Dr. Mike,
Mhm.
it's
Yes.
very sad.
It
But then
is.
that also really brings in a potential for violence. So I think the bottom line is really convincing everyone that even if it doesn't look very suspicious, report it. That
Yes.
way, people who are responsible for safety and security, and definitely the pastor has to take the leadership here, as being responsible for the congregation and the people. And pastor is actually shepherding the people, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and a shepherd is actually responsible for the protection of the sheep as well.
Absolutely. Yes,
So,
he is.
so it's not only just the spiritual food, sharing the word of God, encouraging the people, praying for people, interceding for people, but also making sure that the people are safe, the church is safe, and the services can be run in a way that everyone is safe and they experience God and experience the time of worship in the presence of the Lord in a mighty way. And I think we have to integrate the conversation about safety so that the experience for the people is excellent and they grow in the Lord.
Right.
And I think, and as you said, since I also pastor a church, I bring in like both sides of the coin in terms of
Right.
safety and security, and also having been and still pastoring the church called The Blessing in San Jose, California, and I co-pastor it with my wife Jemima. So
Okay.
it's been a very interesting experience to do both, and definitely to handle that scenario, we have to convince everyone to report it.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Now we're going to close with this, Cyril. We're going to talk about awareness, prevention, and stewardship. And I'm just going to ask you a reflection question, then have one follow-up.
Yeah.
You've mentioned this already, but I think it bears repeating. So I'm going to ask you, what is the first step churches should take if they want to improve prevention and awareness inside their church?
Absolutely. So let me address the churches that already have thought through this and they have some technologies in place. I would say keep improving it. Always ask the question, what can we do to keep improving? Because the people who are trying to perpetrate violence, they are also applying technology, unfortunately. So we need to stay ahead of the game, if you will.
Yes.
I can use that
Yes.
phrase.
Yes,
And
you can.
always ask the question, how can we improve based on what we already have? And for those churches that have not even considered that there could be an incident at church, my advice is get started. Have a conversation with your senior leadership. Have a conversation, all hands meeting, and take steps for an assessment and push forward with some technology and tools, because the tools are available and
That's
they are
right.
cost effective. So there are things that every church in America can do, and I believe there are 300,000 churches, and I think every church needs to take action, and that's what I would say as a counsel and advice.
Very good counsel that you that you gave there. That was real good. The last question we're going to leave on the feel good. What encouragement would you give hesitant leaders?
Yeah, I think there is hesitation to adopt technology in some cases, and I have seen hesitation in adopting AI. My counsel is, and having been in the AI field, in fact, I developed my first expert system in 1993, believe it or not. That was AI at that time, that was expert systems. Of course, generative AI and other things have come up in the last 5-6 years. My advice to you is embrace technology, embrace AI, because it's here to stay. It might seem that there are so many different challenges, and we can talk about it on another podcast, but we need to embrace technology and
Absolutely.
really be good at it, and that will help us in prevention of violence, in keeping our churches safe, and more, because AI is not just limited to security, but AI can help you publish books, can help you with your sermons in certain cases, to get some examples and things like that. But AI is here to stay, and maximize and embrace technology, and do your best to protect your congregation and to really help them in every way possible.
Perfect ending. Perfect ending, Cyril. Okay, I just want to leave a final takeaway with the viewers. And I want to say that preparedness is not only about responding to a crisis, it's also about recognizing concerns early, building trust, and creating communication pathways that help organizations, in this case, churches, protect people before the situation escalates. Okay. I want to thank you, Cyril, for being on the podcast. You did a great job, sir. I appreciate
Thank you so
it.
much, Dr. Mike. It's an honor to be on the podcast and really enjoyed the conversation. And we will continue the conversation.
Yes, sir. Just stand by for a minute, sir, while I close, okay? I want to thank you, the viewers. If you want more information on this topic or any other church security concern, please go to mdbconsultingagency.com/faith secure, and we'll be happy to assist you. Until the next episode, remember to be watchful, prayerful, and prepared. God bless.